Hello everyone, this is General Hand Grenade. Welcome to my war room in Prince George, British Columbia. This is what you're looking at here, version 3 of Global War 1936 to 1945. This map is not quite final art, but it's getting close. The next version that comes out, and it could be soon, hopefully, will be the final art. But the units that I have set up on the board here, these are the setups that are currently in place. They could change just a little bit, but I wouldn't expect them to change too much. I know a lot of people have been wondering what they need to buy in order to, especially the people who have version 2, wondering how many more units they need to buy. And so in a series of videos, I'm going to make a playlist here. I'm going to give you the lists from each and every country, like not just a list of one or like one big list, but I'm going to give you a list from each and every country, and in the description box of each video will be the same file, just so you can get it from any of the videos that you watch. And that file will be it'll be with all of the needed units from all of the countries. What else? Oh yeah, I did a video not too long ago about the neutral setups for this. So I haven't written those down or anything, that those won't be in the file. But if you want to know what the neutral setups are, then just go to that video and I tell you exactly what the neutral setups are. The neutral setups that are on the board right now are what they are, but they're also with the extra units. Like, you know how you get another unit in, say, January of 1941 or something. Well, though I put all the units on the board so that you would know in that video, so that you would know what more you need to have, like not just what was in the opening setup, but what more you would need. So when you go through the file that I give you in the description box, what you're going to find is the setups from all of the nations, and I want you to bear in mind that the list of units from each nation, I want you to bear in mind that these are the most that nation is going to need. So don't get too hung up on, oh geez, I've only got 10 cruisers instead of 12. Like, don't worry about that. You know, like what you have is probably fine. And also you can use chips underneath things. Like if you don't have all the advanced weapons, no problem, you know. Like you can always put a chip underneath a battleship, so that becomes a heavy battleship. A different color chip, well, that becomes a fast battleship. And you don't even have to play with all those units anyway. Like you can pare the game down and say, okay, let's just play with the version 2 units, and then we'll just add one here and there when we can afford it, kind of thing, and build your game that way. There's going to be a few people that just go out and buy all the units and everything, and they'll be ready like I am. I've got all the units that I need. But most people will be just building the game slowly, right? And some of you don't even have version 2, so you think, oh geez, I don't know if I could do that. I've got a long ways to go. Don't worry about that at all. You don't have a long ways to go. If you have Global 40, like Europe and Pacific 40, then you've got just about everything you need already. You could just play with chips, and then you could just add, okay, we're going to add medium bombers to the game now. So you go buy medium bombers for all the nations, or you go and get heavy tanks for all the nations, or something, right? Like you can do it slowly. You don't have to. And in the meantime, if you want to play with all those units, you just put a chip under them. But the other thing is, some of the new units in the game here, like you see down here, this is a coastal defense ship, right? And this is a torpedo boat destroyer. So these things don't get bought during the game. They're leftovers from World War I. And the reason you'll see it in some of the nations that I list, like America, for instance. America does not have any coastal defense ships, and it's only got one torpedo boat destroyer in the 1939 setup. But at the same time, America could also roll in for Brazil here, for instance. They could roll the dice. It's part of the rules. They could align the Brazilians, right? if they get the right role, and they have to pay for the privilege of doing that and everything. So when that happens, like you don't have to have coastal defense ships and torpedo boat destroyers for the Americans. You just put them on top of chips like this, right? So that's an American torpedo boat destroyer now. That's an American coastal defense ship. Like, that's just fine. You can do that too. You don't have to buy all the units that I have. You just have to think about things. And like, we do this all the time anyway with Vichy, to tell the difference between the Vichy ships and the Free French ships, is we just put one of these Vichy chips here underneath the boats that roll Vichy. So that makes it pretty easy for us, and you're going to have just as much fun playing the game doing it that way as you are any other way. Just don't get hung up on, oh, I don't have every single unit or whatever. Like I said, every total that I give you for all the nations is the maximum that I think that you will possibly need. So like you'll see there's quite a few Italians in there, and but you'll probably never use that many Italians. That's just that 1 in 50 games where Italian just becomes a major beast for whatever reason. Like the British abandon the Mediterranean, and the Germans do a lot of lend leasing to the Italians. Just all the stars line up, and Italy becomes a beast that game. But that's hardly never going to happen. So don't worry if you don't have all of the units that I listed Italy. Just use the ones that you have. It'll work out just fine for you. Now, as far as the factories go, when I listed the factories in all the nations, what I did is I listed the kind of factories that I have. See, I have nation-specific factories here. Like, that's a British one, and the Japanese one is orange down there, right? So if you do it that way, you're going to need a lot more factories. But if you're just using generic factories, you need 3 types, right? You need major, medium, and minor. So there'll be a lot fewer factories because, for instance, like you see the factory, minor factory down there that's on Warsaw, right? Well, Germany here could come over and take that. That doesn't mean you change the factory because it's still a minor factory. And then later on, Russia comes over and takes it from Germany. Well, it's still just a minor factory. But if you're playing it the way I play it, then that would take you 3 minor factories because you go from a green one to a black one to a brown one, right? But you don't need as many factories if you're using generic factories. And I would expect probably more than half the people will just use generic factories because those are the ones that they already have, right? I've still got lots of generic factories from my days of playing in Axis and Allies. So when you look at those numbers, you don't have to add up all the factories from all the nations. And in fact, I put in that file, if you're using generic factories, near the very beginning of that file, if you're using generic factories, I'll give you a number that I think you're going to need. And that should be pretty darn close, that number, to the amount of factories that you need. So it's not overwhelming like it would seem if you added up all the different nations, because it does look like a lot of factories the way that I play the game, and it is too, right? Anyway, so this is just a short video just to introduce you to that. The other thing I'd like to say to you, this is actually the last video I'm making, even though it's going to be the first one in the playlist. The last thing I'd like to say is that it's been a pleasure doing this. Not just this video and this series of videos, but I mean working on this game. I had just a thrill going down to Tulsa to work on this game with the other designers, and meeting Doug and Will and Bob and Delijah and Morton and Misha. We had a great time down there, and I can tell you these guys are just as committed as I am, and you know how committed I am because you tune into my channel sometimes, and it seems like I'm kind of obsessed, and I kind of am. I still have a life outside of this. I don't necessarily think of it 24 hours a day, but when I'm in here, I'm totally immersed in this little world here with these little plastic army men, and I found kindred spirits when I went down there. And we worked really, really hard and a lot working together. Like the internet allows people from all parts of the world, like we are, to work together. We like had threads going on emails and text messages and Dropbox, and there was lots of ways that we could communicate. And that's what we did. And we think that we're building the best World War II game out there. And I think that a lot of you are going to think that too, if you decide to jump down that rabbit hole and go with version 3 of Global War 1936 to 1945. So it's been a pleasure, and I just want to thank the rest of the guys for allowing me to be part of their team. And now it's time for me to invite you to become Global Warriors if you're not already. So cut it off now, and you can start watching the other videos and see what kind of units you need. Thank you, everyone. General Hand Grenade out.